Hello, my people. It has been quite a time, quite a time. Like the last time you heard from me, I don't even remember when. We have been postponing a lot of stuff, but currently we are back. So, in this episode, I will tell you why I decided to have this podcast and why did we call it Ulumbi. So, stay with me to the end of this episode and then find out why. Don't miss out. This is Ulumbi Podcast, a podcast that radiates ideas of change, elevates solutions to problems, and transforms the community. Join us as we aspire youth into using their skills, knowledge, and expertise into being at their best version and making a better community. You are with me, your host, Johnson Simon. So before we start answering the question, why did we call this podcast Ulumbi and what are the reasons of having this podcast? And then I would like to share with you a very short history about this podcast. Back in 2020, I guess, I started this podcast calling it The Voice of Johnson Simon, where I created so as I could be able to share my experience with other youth, my own experience to other youth, so as they can be able to learn from that experience, maybe be able to learn how I have passed through different challenges and how I'm able to solve them, or what techniques have I used to solve the problems. But I thought like it would be much better if this experience could not only be mine, maybe somebody else has something else to share, has some challenges they could share with the youth. So I thought it will be better if we start by changing the podcast name to all the way defining new objective of the podcast. So as usual, Google is the best university you can have. It's the best teacher. So you go there, you search your stuff, what you have to learn, and come back and apply it. So I did the same. I went to Google. I Googled because I was planning for a new name. So I went to Google and started to Google characteristic of a good name. And I found that like the good name should be simple. So I was navigating for a simple name. I asked my friend Edwin, a classmate, a very close friend of mine. I asked him, what are the names maybe you could suggest for this podcast, because he knows about the podcast. So after quite a thinking, nobody came with an answer, but I had somebody who was really inspirational, really inspiring guy. When you talk about Kiswahili and all the way motivating youth, Joram Kumbi from Tanzania, he is this guy who brands Swahili in a very unique way. He has also a unique way of speaking Swahili. And he usually uses the phrase Ulumbi kila pahala. I do not know. But when speaking about Ulumbi kila pahala, he means that Swahili everywhere, Swahili everywhere. That's what I understand. Maybe if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me about that. And then, because Joram Nkumbi was such an inspirational person to me by then, and still until now, so I decided to name my podcast after Ulumbi. Before doing that, I went to Google, translated Ulumbi into English to understand the meaning of Ulumbi in English, and boom, here it is. Ulumbi means eloquency. And what is the meaning of eloquency? Eloquency is that, it's the skill or the art of writing or speaking powerfully and convincingly. At the moment, I'm not that person that will demonstrate speaking. I'm not that eloquent person who will demonstrate the skill of speaking powerfully and convincingly. I'm not yet, but I'm sure to learn on the way as we're going on. I'm sure I can learn about this on the way. So here we are. Ulumbi means eloquency. which means the art of writing and speaking powerfully and convincingly. And yes, I'm not yet eloquent, but I will learn on the way. That's a good way to do that. So in this journey, it's a trial and error time until when we master that skill. Also, podcasting to me, it's a very new thing, not only to me, but it's also new in Tanzania. We have very few podcasts until right now running up, very few podcasts. I'm proud to be among the podcasts that we are just starting this one in Tanzania. Whew, it's amazing, Yeah, it's an amazing experience. So when I did this podcast, calling it Ulumbi, I've started multiple Ulumbi podcasts in different host sites like Spotify. You'll find Ulumbi. So, as I said, it's a trial and error. That's what we are doing because it's quite a new skill, so we do not know much about this skill. So instead, we invest some time to learn about this and that, podcasting, how it works, who can host my podcast, like that. That's how we move here. There's no person who will be able to teach me. At once I asked somebody, maybe they can be able to teach me about this, and this was like $63 US, and I was like, damn, I can do that, man. Yo, $63 US, and I'm from Tanzania. Just convert that. 63 times 2,500. How much do you get in Tanzania? And I was like, damn, no, I can't do this. I'm just starting this thing. I cannot do that. So there are a lot of trial and errors that we have been doing in this podcast. But for sure this time, I hope I can survive and I can give you guys the best content ever. Okay? So what do we do in this podcast? Starting Ulumbi and starting the Voice of Johnson Simon and now Ulumbi, it was all about sharing experience towards we can be helping other youth to overcome their obstacles. You're forgiven about this. It's a trial and error. Whenever my pronunciation goes wrong, just forgive me about that. It's fun. So we started the Voice of Johnson Simon and then Ulumbi right now, so as we can be able to help youth to be able to tackle the obstacles that they find on their way to success and being able to reach to the best version, the best version that they can be able to help others. Yeah. So in Ulumbi, we actually act as a guiding light to youth as they find success. So we do quite a lot of things here, like we raise youth awareness in socio-economic matters, not political matters. So we raise awareness on social and economic matters, and that will help the youth to acquire opportunities like innovation, creation, a lot of stuff that are happening in the today's world. That's why we aim, like youth can be able to make decisions based on the socio-economic matters that are happening in the world or in the society by right now. So we also promote youth ventures. Maybe it's an innovation, a business. Yeah, we try to do that also. So we will be calling upon youth who have different innovations. They can be able to come to our studio, which of course we do not have a studio right now. So we can be able to get in touch with youth who have different ventures, maybe doing different ventures at their home places, at school, and being able to promote their work so as they can be able to get, maybe if it's funding, it's a scholarship, about how they can be able to continue doing their work. We can still be able to do that, and we'll be proud to share that. And to add that, we also will be sharing opportunities that will be beneficial to youth. There are a lot of opportunities that might pass us. Yeah, they might pass us because we do not have that information, or we do not have that awareness that there is this opportunity. But being able to have the opportunities shared within a source like this, it will be easier for youth to be able to access those opportunities. So in this podcast, we'll also be sharing opportunities. Maybe if it's scholarship, it's scholarship, maybe jobs, a lot of opportunities that happen in the today's world. We'll be able to share that. And how will we share that? By having connection with the people who host those kind of opportunities. This podcast, I, Johnson Simon, believe that this time we are getting serious in this. So for my brothers like Malcolm Safiri, somebody's studying aeronautic engineering by now, you understand that I've been querying a lot of people asking about how can I improve consistency. That means like I want to keep on producing this episode every now and then, having generative ideas on how I can be doing my episode. And Malcolm Safiri and Edwin gave me very good advice, which I promised them through this podcast I will be able to work on the advice so as I can be able to still rock up with this podcast. Thank you guys, and keep on listening to Ulumbi Podcast. Tell your friend to tell their friends that we are now active in Ulumbi Podcast, and we will be there for them, sharing opportunities for them and making sure that they become their best version and being able to transform their community. Ulumbi Podcast, radiate ideas of change, elevates solutions to problems, and transforms the community. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. Thank you. Until next time, Johnson Simon signing out. Thank you. This is Ulumbi Podcast, a podcast that radiates ideas of change, elevates solutions to problems, and transforms the community. Join us as we aspire youth into using their skills, knowledge, and expertise into being at their best version and making a better community. You are with me, your host, Johnson Simon.